And we are live. Mile high hello, everybody in Broncos country, and welcome into another episode of the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. I am your host, Lance Sanderson, and joining me, as always, is my good friend and colleague. He is your Denver Broncos insider and the senior draft analyst for MileHighHuddle.com. He is the one and only Eric Trickle. Eric, what's going on today, man? How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. So this just occurred to me is like one of these times when we're doing the show and you're doing the introduction, I want to be facing away and then just have that evil spit chair spin around the camera. But,
we have a lot of fun on this show, so why the hell not?
Yeah. But yeah, I'm doing good, man. I'm super excited to be talking about this. I'm actually really happy that for 2 days in a row, we actually have some sort of news that we can talk about.
Yeah.
For the whole last few months, that hasn't really fallen in our favor. It's always fallen to the Huddle Up pod or the Building the Broncos pod, which those guys are great. But hey, I want to talk about some news too, like fresh news. So it's nice and exciting. And I do want to say before we go on here that to answer this question, comment really, is we actually spent all of our pod yesterday basically talking about the declining a Bulls option. So if you really want to hear about it, you can go check it out tomorrow. I'm sure we'll discuss it very briefly, very, very briefly today. But yeah, I mean, definitely, if you want a lot more of our opinions and thoughts on it, just yesterday's pod.
Yeah, absolutely. Yesterday's pod, there was a lot of fireworks. I mean, we got pretty animated. And not only that, there was some technical difficulties that we had to overcome as well. But still, it was a lot of fireworks. There was a lot of things going on, especially regarding that. But for today, we are going to break down just quickly the rumor and the article, the report that Manish Mehta of the New York Daily News brought up earlier today regarding the Broncos potentially trading up with the New York Jets to go up and target Matt Hennessy, the center out of Temple, rather than sitting tight at 83 and going and getting Lloyd Cushenberry. But before we break that down, guys, a couple of quick matters of business. Again, this is the Dove Valley Deep Divers Live podcast. You guys can follow the show at DVDD_pod. You guys can follow us both. You can follow me at Sanderson MHH, and for Eric at Eric Trickle. Notice the CK in Eric and the EL in Trickle. Also, if you guys get an opportunity while you're doing that, follow at Mile High Huddle for instant news and analysis, breaking news updates, film breakdowns, stuff like that on your Denver Broncos. It's really the easiest way to keep caught up with all of your news, especially what's going on today. Now, Eric, according to Manish Mehta, who is pretty much like the Mike Klis of the Denver Broncos, he is pretty well connected with the New York Jets. If you need to know anything about the Jets, you go and you find that Manish Mehta news. He reported earlier today on the New York Daily News that the Broncos were going to try to trade up with the New York Jets to acquire the number 79 overall pick. They were going to give up number 83 at least, and potentially number 178 and number 180 or number 181 to go and target Matt Hennessy, the center out of Temple. When Matt Hennessy got drafted at number 78 overall by the Atlanta Falcons, that is where the trade fell through. So this brings the question to me. First off, I'm going to just run to you and your sources. Have you heard anything as far as this is concerned? Is there actually like truth to this report?
Yeah, there actually is some truth about it. Denver, I mean, Matt Russell actually came out and said that Denver came close to multiple trades. They just ended up being like a player away. So basically what that says to me is, hey, we were expecting so-and-so player to fall to where we were trying to trade up to. They didn't. They went like a player ahead of them. So that's definitely a thing. But yeah, Denver, everything I heard was that Denver actually really, really liked Matt Hennessy. But the fact is that Lloyd Cushenberry wasn't too far behind them in their opinion, which is one reason why they're willing to just risk it in the first place with not taking one of them at 77. They saw Michael Ojemudia, who they really liked. They had highly graded, and he was a player too that they got word that he wasn't going to fall to 83. So they took him. They let the centers fall. They tried to move back up to get the center they really wanted. Just fell short of it a little bit, which sucks for them because I liked Matt Hennessy quite a bit more than Lloyd Cushenberry. But at that point, mid-third round, both of them were good value. So it doesn't really hurt me or bother me that they weren't able to. But I really do like Matt Hennessy. I would have liked him a little bit more than Lloyd Cushenberry. I think that he has a lot more to go off of right away as a pass blocker. That is Lloyd Cushenberry's one big area of concern. And I think that Matt Hennessy offers up a little bit more of a higher ceiling than Lloyd Cushenberry does. But yeah, I mean, it was fine. Like not giving up the extra capital to move up just 4 spots, 5 spots. It is fine with me. Again, hopefully Lloyd Cushenberry works out, because if Lloyd Cushenberry fails and Matt Hennessy succeeds, then it's going to be a lot more of a bummer knowing this.
Yeah. Well, and just going back to the overall theme of what the Broncos did in the draft, they chose a lot of guys that didn't have the higher ceiling, but they had the higher floor. There was not a lot of boom or bust potential, and I could see that a lot with Matt Hennessy, where, yes, he is a little bit better of as a pass protector right now, but there's a lot of development that still needs to occur with Lloyd Cushenberry, and yes, he can develop into a very nice pass blocker, and I think that he's a better run blocker day one than Matt Hennessy is. He's also a very good scheme fit, so the Broncos not necessarily missing out on Matt Hennessy by getting Lloyd Cushenberry. They went out and still got the best center on their board, and it worked out for him. Yes, they would have liked to have gone up and got Matt Hennessy there, obviously just based on the report alone. But at the same time, this kind of begs the question to you, Eric. Would you rather have Matt Hennessy at number 79, or would you rather have Lloyd Cushenberry at 83? And let's just say that the Broncos were to trade number 178, which happened to be that kind of high upside coverage linebacker in Justin Strnad, or would you rather have, say they traded 181 and get rid of Netani Moody, the high upside guy that can't just figure out how to stay healthy? So which would you rather have?
I mean, obviously with my philosophy when it comes to the draft is I want more darts to throw. So I'm not going to take that trade up, especially for a center. I mean, as much as I like Matt Hennessy, I'm just not doing that. I'm going to take those 2 darts compared to the 1 and still get a center and still get another piece, either a linebacker or an offensive guard, both of whom have medical questions going forward that they got to stay healthy, stay out on the field. But yeah, I'm taking those 2 darts to throw instead of just the 1. That's just my philosophy, how it is. I'm very rarely going to be okay with trading up. And yeah, that's just my philosophy. I'm not all for trading up, period.
No, and I totally agree with that. And just looking at how everything fell, especially after the fact with the Broncos there, if they were to trade up and they were to give up number 83, obviously they give up they give up Lloyd Cushenberry to get Matt Hennessy, but they still didn't get a coverage linebacker. They didn't take Akeem Davis-Gaither, even though he was there for them at number 95 overall, and they passed up on that coverage linebacker. So now you've filled one hole with a player that projects higher ceiling, but kind of a lower floor, because you don't really know what you're going to get in Matt Hennessy. You at least know what you have in Lloyd Cushenberry, because he's a more well-refined player with a little bit limited upside as far as where he's at. But then you don't also get Justin Strnad, who with the biceps tear was, I mean, before then he was projected as like a 4th-round linebacker. Now you get him in the 5th round, you get a good value there, and you also fill that need that you don't get by trading up. So to me, it's kind of, I'm definitely with you on that. There's no way, not really no way. I guess if the Broncos were to value Hennessy higher than Cushenberry, then sure, I could understand that. But then you don't go and bolster that linebacker position where everybody knows you have a coverage need there, especially against the tight end position. Getting Justin Strnad and Lloyd Cushenberry, who I had very highly rated on my board, was actually, it's a better move in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I just want to go through, and there was a question that I saw that I wanted to touch up on. Let's see here. Let me see if I can find it real quick. How much of a better prospect is Lloyd Cushenberry than Matt Hennessy? I actually had Matt Hennessy rated higher. I liked him quite a bit more. But it's as Lance said, as Matt Hennessy has not quite as a high floor, but a higher ceiling than Lloyd Cushenberry. So he's a little bit more, I don't want to say boom or bust, but that's the best way to kind of convey that. Whereas Lloyd Cushenberry is a little bit safer as a prospect. So I had him higher simply for that reason. But yeah, I mean, we're not saying that Lloyd Cushenberry is a bad player or anything like that. We both really like him. We both really like the pick. He's a great leader, great run blocker. I mean, the inside zone that the Broncos are going to be running under Pat Shurmur is going to be executed so well, because that's something that Lloyd Cushenberry does so well. That's something that Graham Glasgow does so well. That's something that Dalton Reisner can do so well. So they got the pieces to really fit. It's just, I like Matt Hennessy a little bit more when it comes to trading up. I'm glad they didn't. Really like the player, like the fact they didn't trade up, and they got a good player.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, I think it was specifically on the draft podcast, and I think I even said it earlier yesterday, was the Broncos just now solidified the interior of their offensive line, regardless of if it was Matt Hennessy or if it was Lloyd Cushenberry. They now have Dalton Risner at left guard, they have Graham Glasgow at the right guard, and now they have that starting centerpiece, whether it was Hennessy, whether it was Cushenberry, regardless of anything. Like Nick Kendall says regarding the wide receiver position, it's just your scoop of ice cream. What flavor of ice cream do you like more? Hennessy fits in. He's a good scheme fit, high upside. Lloyd Cushenberry, a little bit safer a pick. Still a very good scheme fit, regardless of who it was. The Broncos now have 3 guys under contract for at least the next 3 years. So there's a lot of growth that can happen on the interior of the offensive line. And just that, especially with the high upside that you potentially have with Glasgow, especially as a pass protector. Dalton Risner showed capably as a pass protector. Lloyd Cushenberry with Mike Munchak might show very high upside as a pass blocker, excuse me. Just the high upside potential for this interior of the offensive line is then going to help on the outside as well, because it's going to give Drew Lock a solid pocket to step up into and throw the football. He's not going to have to stand back behind, evade that edge pressure coming out from Juwan James, who we have no idea if he's going to be healthy, Elijah Wilkinson, who was absolutely terrible last year, and then as we talked about last night with Garrett Bowles, the struggles that he has had, regardless of what you think about him. At least Drew Lock now has a solid pocket he can step up into and release the ball cleanly.
And here's one thing, too, about Drew Lock is that when pressure is coming off the edge, he deals with it fine. He's able to move around. He knows how to avoid it and just maneuver the pocket. But what kills him with pressure is pressure coming on the interior. So that's why I think that Denver made a big – put a big thing on improving the interior of the offensive line with Graham Glasgow and Lloyd Cushenberry, is they wanted to protect that interior pocket. They wanted to give him room to step up on. They wanted to take away that weakness from him a little bit. So, again, it's a really good pick, and it's a pick to basically benefit Drew Lock because of those issues. So there you go. And real quick, PDKJXG, we're going to comment on Garrett Bowles. I mean, it's great that you think that he's trash. We disagree on that. We're here to give our opinions on this. Like, we appreciate your opinion. We're not going to stop defending the dude. We're not going to stop talking about the dude because he's part of the Denver Broncos roster.
Yeah, and just going back to this, here comes TG with a $5 super chat. TG, thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate it, man. Love you guys. Finally, I have been arguing with Zach, with that Zach Kelberman forever about Garrett Bowles, and you guys proved me right. I don't know necessarily that we proved anybody right. It's just our opinion on the entire matter. You know, if you look at Garrett Bowles, statistically speaking, you take away the penalties, he rated very highly in pass protection. He gave up less pressures, and I still have my notes sitting right here. Hold on. He gave up less pressures than Anthony Costanzo, the starting left tackle for the Indianapolis Colts. Less total pressures than David Bakhtiari, Taylor Decker, Alejandro Villanueva, who was a project that Mike Munchak turned from not really retired, but former Army Ranger into starting left tackle. Like, and he gave up less pressures than Mike Munchak's dream child. Like, that's really how it is. And with Mike Munchak in the fold, Garrett Bowles can really improve. There's a lot of improvement to have, and you saw that especially over the latter half of last season, where he only allowed a handful of pressures, only 1 sack given up with Drew Lock under center, and only had 1 holding penalty, which was offset. And I believe that one was against the Minnesota Vikings, which Brandon Allen was the starting quarterback and not Drew Lock. So there's a lot of improvement. And Garrett Bowles, yeah, you can hate on all the penalties, but as a player himself that still has a high developmental upside, why? Like, why would you move on from that? At least keep him under cost control for the next 2 years.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to sit here and get into Bowles. We did that enough last night. It's whatever. It's in the past. We can't make them. They're not going to change their opinion on it. We just got to see what he does this year. Yeah. Nad comes in with the $5 donation. Thank you, Nad. He says, "Hey guys, just want to say I really enjoyed last night's show, and it cut out before I can send you anything. Great job." Thank you, Ned. I'm glad that you guys enjoyed it. I'm glad that a lot of the feedback's actually been positive about it.
Yes.
Although there have been few that have been talking about how angry we were and all that. But But anyways, I do want to say this. I wanted to say this earlier too. If there's a issue on YouTube with the stream, go to Facebook. We have it live there on the Mile High Huddle Facebook page. We have it live on Twitch. You can search us there, Mile High Huddle. We're live on Periscope, and we're also in the Mile High Huddle Mile High Huddle fan group on Facebook as well that you guys can all check us out on there. We don't know what it was with the issue with YouTube, but it was something on YouTube's end. The one thing that on the streaming service that we actually use, it actually makes a comment that due to what's going on in the world right now that we can't really talk about or say, is that, dude, there's an increase in traffic on YouTube, which is causing some issues with it, as well as some issues with comments coming through on Facebook and a bunch of other issues. So we apologize for that, but it is something that is out of our control. And there's another question that I wanted to sit there and go over, and it was asking about which position is more of a need, safety or edge. And this is actually a very interesting question for me, because I've been one who's been pounding the table that both of them are bigger needs than people I've talked about. And for me, I think safety is a bigger need than edge is. And it's not because edge is set by any means. There's so many questions with edge. I mean, Von Miller's age, Bradley Chubb's health, Malik Reed really fell off during the year. Justin Hollins, he's probably going to be more considered an off-ball linebacker than an edge. We have no idea what Derek Tuska is going to do. And Jeremiah Tauchu, as good as he was, he's just a depth piece. Yeah. But at least at edge, they have a depth piece. At safety, I don't like what Trey Marshall's done whatsoever to be given that number 3 safety role. I am not a fan of him. I did not think he played well last year when he was in the field. I think that we're going to see a competition involving him, Duke Dawson, maybe Isaac Yiadom, but the 2 undrafted free agents, Douglas Coleman and Asang Basi, I wouldn't rule them out about winning that job. I think that Denver needs an answer there, because the 3rd safety position in Vic Fangio's defense is considered a starting position. They're a player that's going to see 70+% of the snaps on defense this year.
Yes, absolutely. Because especially given the role in the NFL right now with the high octane passing attacks. I mean, obviously you see the Kansas City Chiefs. You've got the Baltimore Ravens throwing the ball. The Green Bay Packers with Aaron Rodgers. You've got obviously Drew Brees, Tom Brady down in Tampa Bay now. There's a lot of high octane passing attacks you're going to see a lot more nickel packages where you're going to see 5 defensive backs. That means that 5th defensive back is going to be that nickel cornerback. He's going to be that nickel safety, a guy that can play inside and play in the slot. He can potentially slide to the outside, and he can also play deep. Asang Basi is actually a really good guy that the Broncos can suit up there, especially over Isaac Yiadom with his struggles to play inside, his struggles to maintain, turn his head, getting down the field vertically on the outside. And we'll see what happens with him if the Broncos do actually transition him to safety, the way that we're hearing some rumblings coming out of Dove Valley. It's going to be very interesting to see how that works. But with Asang Basi coming in, that's actually a pretty interesting piece to put in there as that nickel defensive back.
Yeah, it is. And I did have post an article. Maybe Buana, since you're the modern thing, maybe you can go grab the link for that. I don't know. But it's about the undrafted free agents and their chances to make the roster. Well, guess what? Asang Basi and Douglas Coleman, the only 2 defensive undrafted free agents the Broncos brought in, had the highest chances for me to make this roster, and it's simply because of how weak the safety position is. And I do want to address this real quick. Wallace, who cares? Why even report that information? It's negative, and is it even true? It's not really negative. I would say it's just something that it's an interesting piece of information showing that the Denver Broncos, once again, I mean, it's been pretty well known, they tried to move up for a player. They just weren't able to do so. That Lloyd Cushenberry, he wasn't their first choice at center, which negative you may call that. It is something that fans should know about. And as for it being true, it is true. Denver, I mean, I like Lloyd Cushenberry. It's not Denver wanting another center doesn't make Lloyd Cushenberry a bad pick. It's just they just felt somebody else was a little bit better. And part of the report was, and the Broncos' response to it through reporters in Denver has been that the 2 centers were very closely graded. Matt Hennessy just happened to be a little bit higher, so they wanted to make the move for it. It's something that's worth talking about, and you may not care, but there are a lot of other fans who do care.
Yeah, it's a very interesting conversation, if nothing else, to figure out. I mean, we're post draft. It's not necessarily to generate a news story or anything like that. You just got to find something to be able to talk about. And this was a very interesting kind of an article coming from a guy that's highly regarded, especially in the national media, as being a guy that is very well versed in what the New York Jets are doing. And for him to come out and drop this kind of a piece of information, it's definitely newsworthy. It definitely is newsworthy. So let's see, there was a couple of questions.
Well, there is one question that I really wanted to get to. I saw Buona Beast post it. It's a question that I've seen him mention a few times, and he actually messaged me about it on Mile High Huddle. He asked about Cordy Glenn. So real quick, Buona, here's my thoughts on Cordy Glenn. I don't think he's a starting caliber tackle. I think he'd be a solid option for depth at this point. As for cost, I wouldn't do more than like a 1 year, $3-4 million deal for him. And a big thing is that maybe you hope that he can regain his starting form that he had, where he was actually a pretty good starter there for a while in Buffalo, but he just started getting hurt and really fell off a cliff. So I wouldn't invest a lot of money into him, but he definitely could be an option. I think of all the free agent tackles that are left available, I think Kelvin Beachum, a guy who has experience with Mike Punchak, I think he's a little bit of a better fit and makes a little bit more sense. We'll see. There's been a lot of rumors going around that Denver is looking at the free agent market to find a potential swing tackle and to find a potential corner.
And that doesn't necessarily that makes a lot of sense is what I wanted to say. It's with the Broncos offensive tackle depth, obviously you've got Garrett Bowles, you've got Juwan James, the health question mark. You've got Elijah Wilkinson, who struggled even way worse than Garrett Bowles even thought of. Then behind that, you've got Quinn Bailey, who's a developmental piece at best, probably going to be sitting as a right tackle at the very best. In the worst case scenario, he's going to be suiting up at right tackle. And you got Jake Rogers, who's really struggled as well, and he would look really bad last year in the preseason. Like the offensive tackle depth on this team, yeah, you can insert a veteran guy, Jason Peters, Kelvin Beachum, Cordy Glenn, any of that. I would understand the move, but at the same time, what kind of upside are you potentially looking at? You've got Kelvin Beachum, who had the same amount of called holding or accepted holding penalties against him last year as Garrett Bowles. You have Jason Peters, who's at 38 years old, had a down year last year as well, and Cordy Glenn, who has been just kind of a hit or miss kind of a guy. Like as a depth piece, a guy that can step in and take over if anybody gets injured, something like that. Sure, I can understand it, but at the same time, let's just kind of see what happens. Let's see what happens, especially with Garrett Bowles, and hopefully, Juwan James comes back healthy.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And there's a lot more questions, guys, but I really want to grab this from Nad. Waiting patiently for my DVD shirt to get here. Yes, so am I. I'm waiting for my hat as well. I made some orders for that stuff and everything. I'm very anxious to get it here. Once that happens, though, the tie will be leaving. I'll be wearing my DVD stuff. I keep saying DVD. But yeah, guys, go make sure you guys are checking that out. HuddleUpPod.com to go get some Dove Valley Deep Divers swag as well as some swag for Huddle Up and building the Broncos as well. Now, one of the other questions that I saw that I wanted to get to was about Michael Ojemudia. And I think this is relevant because Denver took him at 77. A lot of people called him a reach, but guys, he was going either 81 or 82. Just so you know, he wasn't going to make it to 83. But on top of that is the actual question is, how scared are we of him becoming like Isaac Yiadom? Now, I was a big fan of Isaac Yiadom, and this is one reason why I really want to talk about this, but with Isaac Yiadom I had a hard time projecting him to what scheme he'd fit best in. He wasn't very fluid to play man coverage, but he had a good press. He didn't change the direction very well. He didn't read the quarterback very well, so he didn't fit in off coverage either. So it was just very weird to put him. I think that safety actually will be his best spot. Maybe Denver actually looks to move him there, as I've gotten some word that he is. Ojemudia, he does his best with reading the quarterback, which makes him perfect for playing off. I saw somebody else ask a question about moving him to play safety. I'm not doing that because with Broncos scheme, with Vic Fangio's scheme, he's playing off coverage. He needs to be reading the quarterback. He needs to be able to read the quarterback very well and jump routes, which he does very well. When his back does get turned to the quarterback, he still does very well with reading the receiver deeper downfield. And he was the best deep corner in college football the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So that is tremendous. That's a tremendous trait for him. He's not a guy I'm looking at playing safety. I think he can start from day one. To answer yet another question that was in the chat, is he can start day one as a boundary corner playing off coverage for the scheme. That's one thing too, is I was a little on my board. Ojemudia was a little bit lower than 77. I think he was in the early hundreds, like 100 to 110, I think. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head. But here's the thing is that with my board, it's not specific for the Denver Broncos. If it was specific for the Denver Broncos, he would have been higher than some of the other corners that I had above him because these were guys that couldn't play in off coverage as well as he did. He is a tremendous scheme fit, and he wasn't a reach. He was a guy that he was going to be gone before pick 83.
Well, if you watch Michael Ojemudia and watch the way that he worked with Geno Stone in the back end of that secondary in Iowa, he was very fluid as far as passing coverage off and understanding his assignments. He understands where he needs to stop and move back forward into his zone. He understands if he needs to keep moving backwards. He understands where Geno Stone's going to come. Very high football IQ kind of a guy. And when he sits and then drives on the football, he does get his hands on a lot of footballs and takes a lot of footballs away. I saw a lot of very, very nifty interceptions that came out of Michael Ojemudia, just driving back where he drop back in his zone, sit, wait for the guy to pass up, and then drive underneath and go and get that quick out route coming underneath the vertical threat. And just the way that he understands the game, understands the complex defensive schemes. And it's not really a complex defensive scheme in Iowa, but at least he understands how it works. And with Vic Fangio, it's a lot of the same things. A lot of those, make sure you sit and understand your zones. Do what you are told to do, and then work from there. And Michael Ojemudia, with the high football IQ that he actually has, is a very perfect scheme fit, especially in this match quarters, that cover three kind of so cover four match quarters, and then a cover three zone where he can drop back and then continue to work back behind himself and keep working that deep third.
Yeah, and I want to make this clear. We're not saying that Ojemudia is going to be a star. He's a good prospect. There's a lot of stuff that we don't know about with how they're going to transition to the NFL. With Paxton Lynch, we didn't know that he wasn't going to take it seriously, that he was going to want to go play video games more than focus on becoming a better quarterback. We don't know about that kind of stuff. So we don't know what the drive is for Ojemudia to get better, to improve. We just can go off of what we know based off of his performance in college, off of scouting him and everything like that. And he's a good prospect. And I want to make something clear real quick too. Ted, I don't want to talk about Bowles too much because we spent a lot of time talking about that. But I want to say is that he's not my guy. I do defend him quite a bit because he gets a bad rep. But yeah, he's not my guy. He's a guy that I absolutely hated as a 20th overall pick. I had him as a second-round grade at the earliest because he was just so raw of a player, and I didn't see the athleticism that a lot of other people saw. And I have written multiple articles, and we actually have a podcast where I rip him to shreds about it. I just think that he gets a far worse rep than he actually deserves. So I do find myself defending him a little bit. But yeah, he's not my guy.
Yeah, if you're interested in hearing what we had to say about Garett Bolles, and I believe this was right after the Chicago Bears game where he had 4 holding penalties that were called against him, and it was an absolute crap show, for lack of a better term. We actually shredded Garett Bolles and said everything that he was doing wrong, and then all of a sudden he started turning his game around and started to kind of take to the coaching.
Yeah,
are you there?
Yeah, you froze up there for a second, man.
Oh, so, sorry about that. But anyways, go back and check out. Search Dove Valley Deep Divers on YouTube. Do Dove Valley Deep Divers, and then also search Garett Bolles. It's one of our earlier podcasts, honestly, where we shredded Garett Bolles and his technique and everything he needed to do to fix it. And after that podcast came out, it was kind of like he almost listened to us, and he started to fix his game, and he actually started to play a hell of a lot better than he was earlier in the season. And also the quarterback play towards the end of the season with Brandon Allen at least being able to move around, even though he wasn't the best at evading pressure as far as stepping up, he could at least roll away from pressure. And then come with Drew Lock, where the lack of pass rush coming off the left tackle side, Garett Bolles improved drastically over the course of last season.
Yeah, definitely. And again, I really don't want to talk about Bolles that much, man. But going on to any news on Callahan, I'm hoping he comes back healthier, and our starting secondary would be scary. Things I've heard, I'm not overly optimistic about him playing, not necessarily not playing this year, but how much he plays this year. There's been some bad stuff going around about his foot and everything that still raises concerns about it. And just makes me question how many games he will actually play this year. I hope he can prove everything I've heard wrong. I hope what I have heard is wrong, and that he's able to play every game this year, which would be a first time in his career, because he's definitely got talent, and the secondary can really use that help that he brings.
Yeah, I've got a super chat coming in here from John Houston, $5 super chat. Thank you, John, for that. We appreciate you. We appreciate you joining us tonight. What is Netanya Moody's ceiling? Some said he was on par with Quentin Nelson before he got injured. Also, most draft boards had Lloyd higher than Hennessy. And to kind of dispel the Lloyd higher than Hennessy, yeah, I think a lot of that has to just go with name recognition, especially with what LSU was able to do, going out and winning the national championship this year. Obviously, Joe Burrow raises all ships. Good quarterback play raises all ships. But Cushenberry being rated higher than Hennessy, it's that scoop of ice cream. Which one do you prefer? Do you prefer a high upside guy in Hennessy, or do you prefer the safe floor in Cushenberry? That's all it boils down to is who is your guy? Pound your table for your guy. Yeah. Now, going to Netane Muti, the high ceiling there is absolutely true. If you watch him back at Fresno State, especially 2017, where he was manhandling people in the Mountain West. And yes, it is the Mountain West. It's not the Pac-12. It's not the SEC. It's not the ACC, any of those Power 5 conferences. But still, he showed very, very capable as a pass protector. He showed an amazing mean streak in the running game. But the problem is he's just so injury prone. He has a torn Achilles to his name. He has a Liz Frank injury that sidelined him for the rest of last year. So he's only played 5 games, I believe, in the last 2 years of his playing career. So yeah, there's a big question mark there. But as far as the ability that you get to see on tape, absolutely, he could be one of those big mauling run guys. He could be a tremendous pass protector. He could be a second-round pick if he's healthy.
Yeah, definitely. I actually had him graded as a second-round pick until I started hearing more and more concerns about the injuries and everything like that, and just the longevity of his career potentially being in jeopardy as a result. So, which caused him to drop down my board. But if he can stay on the field and everything just basically on the field stuff, he had a second-round grade for me. He is a great prospect that the 19 games in 4 years just caused him to drop. And real quick, JP comes in with a $1.99 donation. I think we should trust Ojemudia to pick a little more. I definitely agree with that.
Yes. Yeah,
I know we actually just talked about Ojemudia, but I actually didn't see it until just now. So going back to the comments, I definitely wanted to get your comment out there.
Yeah, I don't want to leave any of our super chat superstars out in the cold. I agree with that. I think that we should just kind of sit and kind of ponder this Ojemudia pick just a little bit more, just because it is such a perfect scheme fit. There's a lot of high upside there. There's a high floor. Excuse me. There's a high floor as well. What you see is potentially what you get with Michael Ojemudia, and especially if he can develop those smarts and use that high football IQ, he can be a very good cornerback. He may not be, like a Stephon Gilmore. He may not be a Chris Harris Jr., but if you can get a Prince Amukamara out of Michael Ojemudia, is that a bad thing?
I don't know if it's really a bad thing. I mean, I lost my train of thought.
If you can get Prince Amukamara level production out of Michael Ojemudia, is that a bad thing?
No, because Prince Amukamara was actually a very good corner for multiple years, especially in the Vic Fangio defense. He was one of the best corners in the NFL, and I want to say 2017 or 2018 in the Vic Fangio defense. I think it was 2017. But yeah, if you can get that production, you're very happy out of that, because that's more production than you're expecting to get out of a third round pick. And to throw this out there is, I actually just did an article that should be maybe coming out either later tonight or tomorrow about predictions for the Broncos 2020 season. And I'm going to spoil it a little bit, but one of my predictions that Ojemudia is going to end up being the best Broncos corner. So keep an eye out for that to read about my reasoning why. But yeah, I definitely think that he will be a surprise for a lot of people. And John Houston comes in with the $1.99 donation. Should we have taken Jones or Cleveland in the second? And this is a debate that we can have over and over again and just constantly go back and forth on. The fact is that Denver didn't have those two graded higher than KJ Hamler. If they did, they would have selected one of them. They really liked KJ Hamler. They really liked what speed he brought to the offense. He really liked the explosiveness that he brought to the offense. They loved him. They wouldn't got KJ Hamler. Is that what I would have done? Don't know. Can't really say for sure. But going with the team on this one, they liked KJ Hamler more. So I can't fault them for going with their board.
I just want to put in this discussion really fast. What if KJ Hamler ran at the combine and ran what is reportedly as a 4.2740? Now, a couple days ago, I saw a GIF on KJ Hamler. It was a highlight of him returning a kickoff against the Michigan Wolverines. I think it was in 2019. But anyways, I stopped it when he hit the 40-yard line running towards the end zone. It was at 7.02 seconds. When he hit the end zone, the clock read 10.99 seconds. That is 3.97 seconds. 3.97 seconds. And yes, that is with a running start. That is full pads. And yes, it's completely unofficial. There's no way that I can say that, yes, he did run a 3.97 second 40-yard dash. But still, if he does go out to the combine, run 4.27, 4.25, something like that, are we talking about KJ Hamler as a second, potentially third-round pick? Or with that explosive speed, and given the fact that he is extremely explosive, does he sneak into the tail end of the first round?
That's definitely an interesting question, and it has to be balanced out with the fact that on 114 catchable passes, he had 16 drops. He's a smaller receiver. He's going to have issues against size. So it's something that you have to balance out there. In the end, if he did run a 40 and he ran that 4.27 official time, I think that we probably still would have seen him go somewhere in the range that he did. Maybe a couple picks earlier, but I still think somewhere early second round, 40 to 50s, something like that, just because there's so many concerns with his size and his drops.
Yeah, and I understand that the size issues and stuff like that, but still, you don't see those size issues come up with Tyreek Hill and that 4.2 whatever the hell it is speed that he has. They're figuring out a way to use him in Kansas City, and yeah, he's a small kind of a guy, but he's figured it out and has become an explosive player. Not saying that KJ Hamler can be that kind of a guy, but still, there's a lot to like there. There's a lot to like.
So with Tyreek Hill, yes, he is undersized, and actually, we do see his size come up as issues.
Yeah.
Times for the Chiefs. So we can't sit there and say that it doesn't occur. But the big thing with that is that Tyreek Hill, yes, he's super fast and everything. He's a tremendous route runner.
Yes, absolutely.
His ability to use double moves and everything to get corners and get safeties to bite on it, it just helps him get open so that his size doesn't become as big of an issue.
Yep.
And KJ Hamler do the same thing. Oh, yeah, he can develop that route running and become such a threat about it.
But it's already there. It's already there. He's got some refinement to do, but there's still a lot to like about the route running there. I like a lot of what he's doing.
I disagree with that. I don't think his route running, I don't think it's terrible. I don't think it's great. I think it's okay. Needs a lot more work done. And I think Zach Azzanni, he's a guy who he developed Courtland Sutton, who was terrible with routes, and Courtland Sutton became a really good route runner year 2. So we know that there's a coach who can develop that. But I mean, I don't think that it's right to just shrug off his size because Tyreek Hill, when Tyreek Hill is one of the best route runners in the NFL right now, that he uses that route running to get himself open. And James Campbell, Hamler has so much benefits for spacing. He does, which is why he's a good fit in Pat Shurmur's scheme. Pat Shurmur's scheme is an offense that he's going to spread out the defense and he's going to find Locke the open guy because somebody's going to get open. Somebody's going to get some separation against the defense to take advantage of that. So Hamler is a great fit for that. No denying that.
Yeah, and this is also a good point. Zach Azzanni really wanted to recruit Hamler when he was a wide receiver coach at Tennessee, and that was only a few years ago. Zach Azzanni, with the ability that he has shown, not only with Courtland Sutton, but also just to be able to develop Deshaun Hamilton, Tim Patrick as well. But now here begs the question, going back to Tyreek Hill and KJ Hamler and Courtland Sutton as well. With KJ Hamler's route running ability coming out of college and Courtland Sutton's ability to run routes out of college, which one would you rather have just as a pure route runner? Because I know I'm taking KJ Hamler on this one easy.
Over who was the other receiver?
Courtland Sutton. If you had to choose between Courtland Sutton route running and KJ Hamler's route running, who would you prefer?
I mean, I'm going to prefer KJ Hamler's because he's got, at his smaller size, he's not as lumbered of a mover as Courtland Sutton was.
Well, and Courtland Sutton also had a very limited route tree at SMU.
That's true as well. But I mean, it's I don't think that it's right to compare to have those two be the guys. But out of those two, yeah, I'm going to go with KJ Hamler. But yeah, I mean, it's just that is. But again, it goes into the fact that this is a guy that Denver wanted. Zach Azzanni wanted him. Zach Azzanni has shown multiple times that he can develop route running. I'm trusting him with this. I do have concerns about the drops. 16 drops on 114 catchable passes is a bad number. And John Elway can say that it's an issue with his technique all he wants. I disagree. I think it comes with the fact that he just has terrible technique, and he has to rely to double catches and body catches so much that is just leading to a lot of issues with the drops. Can some of it be corrected? I think some of it can be, but I still think we're going to be seeing a pretty high drop rate, probably somewhere about 10 to 15%.
Yeah. All right, so guys, I also have a family barbecue going on right now. There's a bunch of people coming into the house and everything. I've got just some personal stuff that I've got to taken care of. So only a couple more questions. We got to get out of here. We're running about 39 minutes being live right now. I do got one very interesting question for you from Daniel Haycraft on YouTube. Why didn't Douglas Coleman get drafted? Didn't he lead the nation in interceptions?
Well, here's the thing is, first of all, is don't box score scout. And I'm not trying to rip into you, Daniel, or anything like that, but just because a player leads the nation in interceptions doesn't mean he has the technique, doesn't mean he has the ability, the traits to transfer and play well in the NFL. Now, as for Douglas Coleman, I think he should have been drafted. When I watched him, I didn't watch him prior to the draft. When I watched him afterwards, watching his play, I think that there were enough traits there that he can be a solid number 3, number 4 safety and be very good in the NFL in that role. Because he's got decent range, he's got decent speed, he's got good tackling technique. He does very well when reading the quarterback. I think those are traits that you can get a solid player out of it. So I would have gone with used a 6th or 7th round pick on him because he's not the greatest guy with range. He's not the greatest athlete or anything like that. He's just a very solid player that I would want on my team, and I think that he can really be a benefit on special teams.
Yeah,
so I think he should have been drafted.
Yeah, I don't know much about Douglas Coleman. I know that obviously the high interception numbers, the rangy kind of guy that he is, but still at the same time, I really don't know a bunch about him. But one more question before we get out of here, unless we get a flood of stuff coming in here. James Campbell, Mile High Huddle Super Chat Superstar, amazing work that he does with everything he does on the Facebook page. Serious question here. How much of an issue does Elway have with re-signing his own talent? Roby was the last one to get the 5th-year option. Miller, the last drafted talent to get re-signed, if I recall correctly. Feels like he's improved with his draft. Now, this begs a very interesting question here. How has his draft picks actually panned out? Because so with Demaryius Thomas, he wasn't a John Elway draft pick, but John Elway did sign him to a very friendly long-term deal. He got Von Miller. Obviously, he has done work with Brandon McManus. But then also at the same time, he got rid of, Matt Paradis, Connor McGovern walked. You seen Shane Ray, another 1st-round pick, walk. Is there an issue with the way that Elway's drafting, or is there an issue with Elway not liking the guys after he has seen them come into Denver?
I think it's an issue with the players.
Yeah.
Not just the players, just to be clear. I think it's an issue with the money the players want, the personnel the Broncos have, and just things like that. I mean, Von Miller, yeah, he was great. Orlando Franklin, when it came time for him, Denver was just ready to move on. He wanted a little bit more money than Denver was willing to give him. Julius Thomas, he was a guy that they didn't want to pay because of his atrocious blocking. He moved on from there. Danny Trevathan and Malik Jackson, those were guys that when it came time to re-sign them, Denver
had money.
They couldn't afford to put extra money onto the defensive line after re-signing Derek Wolfe. And with Danny Trevathan, they just didn't feel that they wanted to spend that kind of money on the linebacker position because it's not a valued position for John Elway. It really isn't. And then you look at some of these other picks, they've had a lot of misses on it. I mean, that 2013 draft, that's basically all gone. I mean, seriously, look at it. I mean, it's just atrocious of a draft. In 2014, Bradley Roby, when it came time for him, Denver was interested, but he wanted a little bit more money than Denver was willing to get. Matt Paradis, Denver was scared away by his hips, so he wanted more money than Denver was willing to give him. Cody Latimer, there was a lot of issues there behind the scenes that both sides were ready to move on from. Denver re-signed Jeff Hireman. They brought him back. I mean, for a 2-year deal, but it's just the thing of that there's so many other variables in play with it. Justin Simmons, I fully expect him to get a big extension here before the deadline. And I want to put this out there is I saw somebody mention about Will Parks and throwing more money at Will Parks.
Yep, I saw that too.
The thing with that is that Will Parks wanted to start. He took less from Philadelphia because he's getting a chance to start. If he returned back to Denver, he wanted a lot more money than he actually got to be a depth piece. His biggest thing was that he didn't want money. He wanted a chance to start. He took that 1-year deal. He's going to go in. He's going to compete to start with the Philadelphia Eagles, returning home, by the way, and see if he can't capitalize on that next year.
And I agree with that as far as Will Parks. Now, there is one thing that kind of gives me just a little bit of pause with Vic Fangio's scheme and Will Parks being that nickel safety, that nickel cornerback, that nickel defensive back hybrid kind of guy. it does kind of raise the question, is that a starting position, especially in Vic Fangio's scheme? And yes, he did want a lot more money. He wanted an opportunity to go back and be that deep safety and play a little bit more off the ball, not have to play on the inside a little bit, and just be that deep safety in that Philadelphia scheme. But also as a off the field kind of a guy, he's a great leader. He did a lot of work in Denver, but he is also from Philadelphia, and he loves that city, and he wants to go and make that city a better place for a lot of just African-American children, and just to kind of get some people to be better is the biggest thing. He wants to go and give back to that community. And he couldn't have that opportunity. He did have the opportunity to be the philanthropist in Denver, but the ability to start and go have a premier role in that defense and not a secondary kind of a rotational piece in Denver's defense, to go to Philadelphia and actually be able to do that, it was too good of an opportunity for him to pass up. Now, guys, I do got to get going here, but before we get out of here, Bawana Beast coming in and saying, thank you, Eric and Lance, for a great podcast. You guys have brought it these last 2 days. Leave a like. Make sure you guys smash that like button, tap it, whatever you got to do. Show us some support in the easiest way you possibly can. Head on over to milehighhuddle.com for articles. Leave a like and a comment. And also, great stuff from the chat. We do appreciate it, guys. You guys can follow me at Sanderson MHH, and for Eric at Eric Trickle. You guys can follow the show at Dove Valley Deep Dive, or excuse me, at DVDD_pod. Follow at Mile High Huddle for breaking news and analysis on your Denver Broncos. And Eric, anything else before we get out of here tonight? Any last words?
Yeah, Garrett Bowles doesn't suck. Stop hating on him. He's at the very worst league average. Thank you. Good night.
All right, guys. Well, for Eric, I am Lance. You guys have a great evening. You guys stay safe and take care. We'll see you next time.